Hi, my name is Debbie Long and I work for On-Course Learning. I provide the national review of pre-licensing topics on Wednesday nights. Sometimes it's helpful to understand why topics are important and why in fact they're so complex. Agency relationships is one of those topics. Back in the 1970s when I first started in the real estate business, there really was only one acceptable way of doing business, and that was representing the seller. All brokers represented the seller. And this was a simple model, but in its own ways, it was somewhat deceptive because we very often got into relationships with buyers, getting very close to them, having buyers share confidential information with us, but then had to remember that we were legally and ethically obligated to get the seller the highest possible price. Well, sooner or later, a model as complex as that is going to bring its own challenges. And what happened in the 1990s was a young woman looking for a home in Edina, Minnesota, a suburb of Minneapolis, hired a broker, believing that that broker was her agent. She had one specific requirement, and that is that the property that she buys has an underground sprinkler system because she didn't want to fool around with watering a lawn on a hot summer in the Minneapolis area. She trusted her broker so much that she didn't bother to get an independent inspection done. And you know how this story is going to end. After closing, Jamie Bukuski, the buyer, found out that in fact the property did not have an underground sprinkler system. She was very dismayed, went to the broker, and unfortunately the broker didn't offer to make this situation right. So the buyer, Jamie, turned to an attorney who said, "You don't want to sue this company. It's a large independent firm. They have a lot of lawyers. You'll spend a lot more money suing than you would ever in having to just buy a sprinkler system outright." But Jamie made it very clear. She said to her attorney, "You don't understand, I trusted my agent so much that I didn't bother to get an independent inspection done." The attorney at that point said, "You have to understand, your broker didn't represent you. That broker represented the seller." Jamie felt betrayed, and at that point the attorney realized he had a case not just of simple misrepresentation about a sprinkler system, but in fact about undisclosed dual agency. That case became the basis of a $500 million lawsuit. Now that might not sound like a lot of money back then, but it really scared brokers all over the country because we knew that many of us had not been as forthcoming with buyers as we possibly could. Ultimately, the brokerage firm settled the case to the tune of $19 million. The company never admitted any wrongdoing, but we knew that we had to do something in the business to take care of these potential problems. One of the things that happened was state by state, every jurisdiction started to pass legislation either outlawing dual agency or, in the case of the majority of states, saying you can practice dual agency if you're a broker, but you're going to have to get some kind of written consent after appropriate disclosure. And as a consequence, we now have a patchwork quilt of rules, all different in every single state, not only requiring that we disclose to buyers for whom we work, but also making it possible for buyers to get their own representation if they want. So you see, this topic is one of the many challenging topics that you're going to be studying for the national exam, but it has a history, and sometimes if you understand the history, you understand why we do things the way we do. Thanks for joining me.